The United States has had its credit rating downgraded for the first time in its history.
We suffer from a fiscal cancer. It is growing within us.
Soaring price of gasoline, now $3.67 a gallon on average.
And by reforming our tax code in a way that asks the wealthiest Americans and biggest corporations to pay their fair share.
Hi, I'm Tony Robbins. Listen, right now there's a debate raging in this country, especially in an election year, and it's a debate about how to solve the economic problems that we're all now facing. We've spent beyond our means for decades as a nation, and now we're getting to a tipping point, one that's so significant, one that's so dangerous that even the S&P acted to lower our sovereign credit rating for the first time in history. I think we all know that politicians, whether they be congressmen or senators or even presidents of the United States, whether they be on the right or the left, they tend to promote whatever supports their ideology, whatever they believe in, or unfortunately, whatever will get them elected or maybe reelected. But if you're independent in your thinking, the raw and real facts, the data, the simple facts can be extremely helpful in answering this big current political debate, which is how do we become solvent once again as a nation? Can we get there just by raising taxes on, quote, millionaires and billionaires? Can we truly cover all our expenses by just soaking the rich? Or do we have to, as painful as it might sound, find a way to cut some of our expenses, even the difficult ones? Liberals say tax the rich and that'll do it. Conservatives say that'll destroy the economy and you have to cut expenses. Common sense, I think, says that we have to do both. Wouldn't you agree? Well, regardless of your political point of view, I think this quick video will give you a really cool perspective on the size of our economic challenge by demonstrating, based on this year's expenses, what our current Congress and the President has set up for 2012, what will it take in taxes to cover it all? What would it take? If we taxed all the richest corporations, the richest people, will it cover it, or how much more would we need? I think the answer might really blow your mind. So let's talk about these numbers, a million, a billion, and a trillion. I mean, you see these numbers being thrown around every day of our lives, and you hear the numbers like a trillion today. You never hear a million when you talk about the federal government. It's always billions and trillions are often discussed over pizza today. So how much is a million versus a billion? Our minds kind of go numb. One way to do it is to convert into something that you can relate to, like seconds. If I asked you, how long ago was a million seconds ago, what would your first gut reaction be? Don't try to think in your head, just in your gut. What's inside you? A million seconds, would that be a day ago, a million seconds ago, a week ago, a month ago, a year ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago? What would you guess? The answer is 12 days ago. 1 million seconds was 12 days ago. Now, on the other hand, what would you say a billion seconds ago was? Well, again, if it's 12 days for a million, what would a billion seconds come up to? How far back would we have to go to get to a billion seconds so we get a sense of proportion? Well, some people might say, well, if it's 12 days for a million, maybe it's a year or 10 years or 20 years. No, in fact, it's 32 years to get to a billion seconds ago. It'd be 1980. To give you a perspective, President Carter was the President of the United States at that time. We had movies like The Shining or The Empire Strikes Back. In Iran, they had Americans hostage, if you remember that. Some conflicts, I guess, don't change no matter how long you go back. So that's the difference, 12 days versus 32 years, a million versus a billion. But the number we hear thrown around these days by politicians is $1 trillion. And the truth is we have $15.4 trillion in deficit in this country. And that doesn't count the unfunded liabilities that come from Medicare and Social Security, which some statistics show that it's up to $117 trillion. So how long would 1 trillion seconds ago have been? Again, a million is 12 days ago, a billion 32 years ago. What would you think 1 trillion would be? 500 years? 1,000 years? The answer is 32,000 years, just short of 32,000 years. And to give you an idea, that's when man wasn't even known as man. When Homo sapiens, were in a very rare and unique form a long, long time ago. So that's 1 trillion, not 15 trillion. To give you some other sense of perspective, If you made $1 million every day, you earned $1 million every single day of your life, and you started in the time of Jesus Christ's birth, and every single day you made $1 million up to 2012, you wouldn't have even gotten close to earning $1 trillion. It would take you almost another 1,000 years to get to that number. And we're talking about 15 trillion in deficit, and we're talking about, or debt I should say, and we're talking about a situation with 117 trillion of unfunded liabilities. I'll just give you one more metaphor, an accurate one. If you took the 15 trillion that we owe, and you made it into dollar bills, and you put them end to end, side to side, you could cover every single highway and every country road in America 2 times over with literally dollar bills. It's such a staggering number, it's beyond imagination. Yet people throw these numbers around because people don't make much of a difference in their mind between $1 million and $1 billion. In fact, over 2 centuries, from the time of George Washington's administration all the way to the end of the Reagan administration, the US accumulated a total debt of $2.2 trillion. Now today you might just say just $2.2 trillion, because here's what'll blow your mind. In the last 24 months alone, between August 2009 and August 2011, we've created an additional debt of $2.95 trillion, almost $3 trillion that we've accumulated literally in 2 years, more than it took us to accumulate in 200 of the previous years of all the American administrations. So now you get a chance to appreciate some hard work that comes from just one dedicated blogger taking the time to spell out for you in plain English what the issues really are. When I was looking online, trying to find ways to be able to show you a visual way to see quickly what the deficit is, or I should say what this year's spending is going to be and how we're going to meet it, I came across this blog by this man named Iowa Hawk, who is more of a conservative. I'm more independent, so I'm not going to use his inflammatory language, but what he did a damn good job of, and our research team went and did additional research on, is coming up with the real numbers. And this is his format. So I'm going to pretty much take what he got in his, put it out in his blog and make it more visual for you in this video. So I want to thank you, Iowa Hawk, in advance for putting this brilliant information out. And you can find Iowa Hawk at iowahawk.typepad.com if you want to read his material. But be aware that he's more conservative in his personal approach. So he's a bit inflammatory if you're more independent or if you're more liberal in your approach. So I also want to thank my research team, because Iowa Hawk did this in 2010 for the 2011 budget. And we've gone through and done all the research my team has to give you the 2012 numbers. So these are the current numbers. So let's begin. Let's look at some basic research and try and figure out, how do we actually pay for this $379 trillion that President Obama and this Congress have planned to spend in 2012? By the way, that's $10.4 billion a day that we got to live on. Just think about it. America has to live on $10 billion a day, and we're borrowing more than $4 billion of that every single day just to stay afloat. So let's start with a calendar, and let's start at 12:01 a.m., January 1st. Now, according to Iowa Hawk, the only thing more evil to a liberal than a rich person is a rich corporation. So he takes those 2 corporations that he thinks most people that are liberal consider to be the most evil, which is ExxonMobil and Walmart, and he says, forget the high taxes. Let's just take every single penny of their combined 2011 global profits. That's $46.7 billion. Now, if we spend all of their profits, it only gets us from midnight on January 1st to 12:45 p.m. on January 5th. That's after taking the profits, all of them, global profits, the 2 largest corporations in the world. So that's not too impressive. So he starts to say, let's look at this deeper. Let's take every single penny of profit, every penny that comes from the other 498 companies on the Fortune 500, all of it. That's $567 billion, and that still just gets us to 12:15 a.m. on February 29th, my birthday, leap year. Now, obviously, this isn't getting us where we need to go. We've taken every dime of profit from the big Fortune 500 companies, and it's a few weeks after the Super Bowl, so what do? Maybe we go back and we just grab all the corporate advertising, all that was spent, which was $200 million. That'll run the country for about 28 minutes. But why stop there? Let's take all of the ad money, all the 46 years of Super Bowls. That totals $5.2 billion. If somehow we could have a retroactive tax and get all 46 years of all the money ever spent, we'd still only be able to get to 12:15 p.m. on the same day, February 29th. Look, it's obvious that we're not just getting where we want to go, so we can't just throw it off the backs of corporations. So Iowa Hawk says, let's really go after what liberal politicians are asking. Let's soak those rich people. And we're going to do it by going after, let's start with, let's say, the athletes. They get these obscene sports salaries, and they're not really adding any value. So let's just take all of their salaries from both the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, Major League Baseball, not their endorsement deals, but all of their salaries. And let's also take the winnings of the PGA Tour and the money spent on NASCAR, put it all together. And that's $10.1 billion. Now I want you to remember, it takes $10.4 billion just to fund the country every day. So we don't even get a day out of it. Basically, it gets us to 11:35 a.m. on the next day, March 1st. After all this, we basically funded the country for 2 months. So look, forget the athletes. Take all their money, but that's obviously not going to be enough, so let's get to all the really rich people. Let's take 100% of every penny that anyone who makes above, say, $250,000 a year, certainly that'll take care of all of our financial needs for the country for at least a year, won't it? Let's see. According to the Census Bureau, the US Census Bureau, the number of households, US households that are at that number, there's 117.5 million. The percentage of those households that make over $250,000 a year now, in that income range, is almost 2%. But let's round it up to 2%. And let's take that number and find out what it is. So that number of households really above $250,000 in income right now is 2,350,716 households. The total income, check this out, from all those households that make over $250,000 a year is a total of $1.363 trillion. Now we're talking, right? Iowa Hawk says, let's just eat the rich. Let's take everything they got, everything that anyone makes over $250,000 a year, and let's see where that really gets us. It gets us from March 1st at 1 p.m. to July 10th, at 1 p.m. on July 10th, I should say. Now, where do we go from here? We've taxed the richest people in the world, the richest corporations in the world. Look, obviously, we're going to have to really cut some spending somewhere. Well, why don't we just stop spending money on, the wars in Iraq and in Afghanistan? I think there are a lot of us that would love to see that happen. After all, that money is going away to things that could be used for healthcare, or is it just being used really on wars for oil? So let's not spend another dime starting tomorrow. Let's just somehow cut it all off instantaneously, and let's all bring them all home right now. Many people would support that. That, if we somehow could magically do it, would save us $117 billion this year in 2012. That's enough savings basically to cover us until 8 p.m. on July 21st. Listen, who else can we tax that's living too well? Because after all, we need more money. We got to pay our bills here in the US. So Iowa Hawk says this, screw you, Star Wars. We're going to take every penny that you made in movies and toys and lunch boxes, the whole shebang. It took you 35 years for your $26.6 billion, and we're going to come up with some retroactive tax, and we're going to take it all. How much of a difference would that really make in paying our bills? Well, it'll knock us all the way down to 9:20 a.m. on July 24th. Well, look, everyone knows those Hollywood people. They only employ rich actors and producers and directors, and they all live in Beverly Hills. So let's evict everyone in Beverly Hills. Let's confiscate their home, and let's sell all their homes at market value. Look, there's 15,000 homes in Beverly Hills. The average price, $3.2 million. That'll get us $48 billion paying our bills through July 29th of this year. Still in July. Obviously, this isn't working. So Iowa Hawk says, look, Michael Moore assures us that there's plenty of money out there, and it's all tied up with the rich. So guess what, liberal billionaires Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, he says, tough luck for you. His suggestion, you guys are worth $100 billion between the two of you. Maybe it's time for an accidental fall down the stairs. And through the inheritance tax, we will magically keep 50% of that loot, and that'll give us $50 billion to help pay our bills. How far will that get us this year? Well, really, if we kill them both off and took half of everything they have, it gets us to 7 p.m. on August 2nd of this year. All right, look, let's get serious. There's 398 more billionaires in America, according to the latest Forbes 400, with a combined total net worth of 1.4 trillion. He says if we can just arrange a few more hundred accidents at 50% death tax, kill them all off, take all their estate money, and we'll have another $700 billion. But even still, after killing all the US billionaires and all the jobs and opportunities they create, it helps us pay our bills only till 2 a.m. on October 9th of this year. We're still not even to pay our bills for the entire year. Okay, let's forget this mamby-pamby 50% nonsense, he says. Kill all the billionaires and forget 50%, forget their heirs. Take all of their money, all of it. They're all crooks anyway. Take everything and take, well, let's say the 100 or so other almost billionaires. Take everything they've got as well. And that just gets us another 32 days until 12:30 a.m. on November 10th. Well, that's the start of the holiday season, isn't it? So let's pull a little Grinch and let's take all the sales from all the holiday shopping that's expected this year, a whopping $469 billion. That should hold us over till 12:55 p.m. on December 25th. Merry Christmas, everyone. We're almost there. Now remember, this money is for America's poor, so in the spirit of Christmas, let's get rid of all that foreign aid, those dying children, AIDS, all those things that we're trying to make a difference with. Let's get rid of all that. It's $53.3 billion. Let's keep it for ourselves. That gets us until 3:55 p.m. on December 30th. So I'm sorry, but we've still got a date and a little change to pay for. So to cover the remaining $13.8 billion, we're going to have to hit up every single man, woman, and child in America for $44 each to keep America intact and pay our bills for that final 32 hours of our year, which of course finally gets us to 12 o'clock, January 1st, 2013. Happy New Year, everybody. But what happens next? You see, we've taken all the profits and all the salaries and all the assets and the expenses and the revenues and the holdings of the rich and those corporations, and we've liquidated them. So what happens when you kill off the golden goose? There's no more golden eggs. There's no more profits. There's no more revenues that are available for tax and thus fund our government. What are we going to do? Yet President Obama and our Congress, meanwhile, they're proposing we spend another $3.8 trillion in 2013. And somehow, magically, we're going to spend even more, but he projects somehow that our deficit will be smaller, that somehow our revenues will grow this year. He projected that in 2012, and it wasn't true. Same numbers. He said we'd have a $900 billion deficit. In reality, it's going to be $1.3 trillion, being off by 30, 35, 40%, whatever that number may be. That assumes, by the way, $2.9 trillion in revenues. But where are you going to get revenues from when you kill off all of the possibilities, all of the private enterprise? See, we've destroyed the private capital. We've destroyed advertising revenues. We've destroyed professional sports. We've taken every penny that people have put into new businesses to pay for things, and it's all gone. We ate the rich. We ate everything they had, and we scraped through for 1 year. Now what do we do? Something to think about. I hope this video stimulates you to think about what solutions are. I'm not suggesting we can only cut spending. We're going to have to raise revenues as well, I believe. But what do you believe is what really matters? And how will you use your voice to educate other people, or maybe use your vote to make a difference in the world that we live in, where people think about a million, a billion, and trillion as numbers instead of lives, instead of decisions, hard decisions we've got to make. I hope this has been stimulating, and I'd be interested to hear your feedback. All the best to you. Live strong and live with passion. I'm Tony Robbins.